You are at war with yourself and likely don't realize it. Your thoughts, beliefs, habits, and actions often sabotage you. Are they helping you overcome adversity or setting you up for failure? To win this battle, you must connect with your inner warrior. We all have a warrior within us, one that strengthens our resolve and helps us to rise to meet life's challenges. If you're just surviving rather than thriving, then it's time to embrace the warrior archetype, live the warrior ethos, and ascend. If you are a veteran, first responder, or someone looking to take charge of your life, find your tribe, and then be the hero of your own story, this podcast is for you. Join Mike Kinney and Matt Hastings, two retired U.S. Army officers who served in U.S. Army Special Operations and Army Aviation units, as they share with you optimal performance practices they learned in their time with the Military and Warriors Ascent, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps veterans and warriors with PTS.
All right, Brother Matt. So let me ask you, let me ask the audience, right? Have you ever felt your motivation wane, right? And wonder, if there's anything that you could do about it, right? Have you, had an ambition or a goal, whether it be your military career or even now? I mean, I deal with this constantly, that, you're aspiring towards, but then you're losing hope in achieving it. And then, wondering, man, is there anything I can do about that? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it happens to all of us, right? Doesn't it?
I know it's happened in my military career. I know it happens currently. And you're like, man, hey, I'm losing motivation, hope, it's waning and I want to get it back. Well, we're going to talk about that today.
I think there's a whole industry that helps you with that. They try.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. The self-help industry, right? No, but, there are actually, equations that we'll speak to.
Why did I know you would have an equation for this, Mike?
Because that's what I do. That's what I do. I love equations. No, but so, hey, this is the Warriors Ascent podcast. I'm Mike Kinney. This is Matt Hastings, two retired military veterans. And today we're going to speak to healing and tending the soul or spirit as it relates to motivation and hope. So with that said, as I've mentioned, let's start with the equations for hope and motivation or procrastination. So what we see here is first motivation, or the procrastination equation. We'll credit Piers with this PhD, right? So he says that motivation really is a function of expectancy times value, right, over impulsivity times delay, right? So we've talked about this.
Yeah, Mike, can you explain that to me? I thought a PhD was a post hole digger.
Right.
I might need some help on this one.
Right. Well, I think I can. I don't have a PhD, but I can at least explain the equation. But no. So expectancy.
Yeah. So let's see. I expect that I could make it to become a helicopter pilot. Is what I think of as what we could say in this model. Am I correct?
That's exactly it. So in terms of your motivation, right?
Yeah.
If you feel that, hey, do I have the ability, right? Is there a path forward for me? Do I have the ability to actually achieve that goal? Is it reasonable, right? Is your expectancy then high?
Was it? Yeah, I had a high expectancy because it wasn't going to be an easy task, but it was a reachable task.
Right. And you knew it'd have its challenges. So I've got an asterisk there, right? Because I wanted to kind of call out from that, or at least speak to the Stockdale paradox, and then Whoop from Gabriel Oettingen. And the reason I think this is important is because in terms of expectancy, right, if you are not stealing your resolve, in anticipation of difficulty, you're setting yourself up for failure. So while on one hand, you want a reasonable expectation of success, clearly, otherwise, your motivation is going to wane because you're like, there's just no way this is going to happen for me, right? But the flip side of that coin is if you've got this idealistic concept of it's going to be easy, right? Or, there are going to be no issues, no obstacles, no anything. And my path, it'd be a cloudless sky. That's setting yourself up for failure as well. So the Stockdale paradox. So Admiral Stockdale, Vietnam veteran, aviator, naval aviator, was shot down in North Vietnam, was captured, spent time in the Hanoi Hilton, right? And, was finally freed. And they asked him, how is it that you survived? And what was the difference between those that survived in captivity and those that did not make it? And what he cited was this. What he said was, those that were despondent, they thought, oh, there's no hope, I'm going to be here forever. They didn't do well because they didn't have the motivation. They weren't, optimistic in terms of their chances. The paradox lies in, though, those that also didn't do well were those that were overly optimistic and felt that, well, we're going to be out by Christmas was the example that he used. And then Christmas came and went and they weren't freed. Oh, well, we'll be out by Easter then. And Easter came and went and they weren't freed. And next thing you know, they're like, oh, God. And they lost hope too. They were overly optimistic. Despondent. That's exactly it. So the paradox lies in you need to be resolute, in your resolve that, hey, I will make it through this. Your expectancy is high, but you need to temper it with expectation, reasonable expectation that, hey, it's going to be difficult, right? There are going to be some roadblocks. It is not going to be easy. And that's where that whoop construct comes in. Wish, outcome, obstacle, plan from Gabrielle Oettingen. And she's a psychologist as well. And what she's pointed out is the difference between those that are high achievers that accomplish their goals and those that don't, those that give up or those that fail, is that anticipation of the obstacles. So you have your wish, right? This is what it is that I want to achieve, or case in point, in Admiral Stockdale's point, or in his instance, I want to get out of here. I want to see my family again. So that's the wish. The outcome will be, I'll be reunited with my family, get back to normalcy, and do my thing. Obstacles in that it's going to be a long, hard slog. That point right there is what separates those that achieve and endure with those that don't, is that anticipation of obstacles and then catering for that and then planning for it.
Right.
And then
that's a good military technique. We know there's going to be, everything is going to go wrong. So we plan so many contingencies that one of them eventually comes up and you go, wow, I'm ready for it.
Right. No, exactly.
Same idea, but mentally here, I think.
No, and then having the plan not only to have your wish granted, but how you're going to work around those obstacles. So the reason I say that is expectancy is exceedingly important, but it's expectancy within reasons. It's not this pie in the sky. Everything's going to be great. I'm going to be rich and famous, handsome and powerful, and it's going to be awesome. It's like, no, there's a price to be paid, and you will pay that price, and you need to be prepared to do that. So next, is value. So speak to value for us, especially in the context of what it is that you were doing.
Well, and that's like, how much do you want something? In my case, being a helicopter pilot, I was coming from the civilian world, and every recruiter said, no, why would we ever take a civilian for this very hard to get thing? We would always take somebody from within because we already know that they're a soldier. We already have turned them into a soldier. You aren't one. Well, why would we ever pick you? And I'm like, well, because I don't want to hear this. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to try anyway. That's how much I want it, And at each step, it was like that. You just have to want something. I mean, I wanted to be a pilot if you take that back, and it's just how many different routes I finally ended up at flight school in Fort Rucker, Alabama. And I did not think that was going to be the method in which I did it, but it was, and it was the career I was looking for. I just didn't know it.
No, and that value is high, so you were willing to put up with.
Yeah, and I mean,
with all of that, and say, no, hey, no matter what, I'm going to find a way.
Some people were they found out that they had air sickness right away, and they still had to fight through that. There's a lot of people. I think a lot of people don't become pilots mainly because of fear. It's not that it's so hard that you can't be trained. It's some people just can't overcome a fear, or their gyros in their head just don't work good off the ground, and they can't fix some of these things,
The gyros in their head.
Yeah.
No, that's good. No, I mean, for me, so between, West Point, Ranger, SFAS, all of that stuff, same deal. I mean, all of those things really pretty tough, and I'm not trying to tell, stories. Oh, there I was. But, I remember my mother asking me, when I was at the academy, she asked, do you think you'll make it? And, I remember saying to her, I will handcuff myself to my desk if I have to, because this is my one shot. I came from, I'll say lower middle class family.
Yeah.
Getting into West Point was, a big opportunity to really, do well for myself. And I certainly was not going to squander it. So no matter what, I was going to expend every effort to make the best of that. Absolutely. And then, I'll say go to Ranger, school. That absolutely sucked, and I went in the winter, December to February, which made it suck even more. And, that's one of those things where, I was telling my son, they've got the Nasty Nick obstacle course, and they've got this, barbed wire that you crawl under. It's the worm pit, right?
Ugh.
And it was so cold, they broke the ice off that stuff.
Well, that was nice of him.
Right. I know that was nice of him, and then you crawl under that and you're just like, man, why am I doing this, man? It's like, because, hey, I want to be a Ranger, you get the Ranger tab. I didn't want to go to my first unit, 3187 Infantry, Iron Rock Sons, without a Ranger tab. They took that very seriously right. In the Iron Rock Sons. So, I wanted that more than anything, and the list goes on. Same thing with Special Forces. I'd seen, some Special Forces operators when I was at West Point, for some of our summer training. And I was like, those guys are the best. They're awesome. I want to be like them.
Right.
And same deal. It's like, I will pay any price, within reason, to do that. So that value is, exceedingly high. And I think reflecting on, my career, my life, the things that have really helped me endure under the most dire of circumstances is really having that high value on what it was that I wanted to achieve. And without that, quite frankly, I don't think you've got that motivation.
Right. So, for any task, even an easy task.
Yeah. Or even doesn't have to be anything like, to your point, super rugged or tough, but there's got to be at least, I'll say, value commensurate with the level of effort that you're going to put forth.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So that's the numerator. So now we're going to talk math, right? So that, the higher that is, the higher your potential, or the higher your motivation. The denominator, impulsivity and delay, obviously detracts from that. So the higher that is, the less motivation you're going to have. So we're going to kind of break that out. So impulsivity. Care to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, impulsivity, this is where you got to stay consistent. You can't just say, well, one day, I'm going to be a pilot. Nah, never mind. I'm going to be, a combat engineer, or no, never mind. I'm not even going into the military anymore.
Right.
And,
chasing the next shiny thing.
We call it the bigger, better deal, the BBD.
The bigger, better deal.
Yeah. And just like, not content with where you are, not even becoming even good at what you're at,
Right.
I saw a lot of guys do this, not flight school guys, but you're in your unit, you're getting long in the tooth, you think you know everything, and next they're picking up a side gig, and it's like, well, you're not even good at your first gig. Why don't you spend that side gig time becoming more of a professional on the main line one that's important?
Getting more proficiency.
That was my problem with impulsivity that I found.
Yeah. No, so it's it's that lack of focus, that lack of commitment, or chasing the shiny thing, and you see that's very prevalent today, I think. And on one hand, it's interesting, that there's many interesting things to accomplish. And that's not saying to not be multifaceted or not to have multiple interests, but to realize that to really make progress, you've got to stay focused and committed to, accomplishing something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it really is. How can you have that kind of value and that tenacity without, consistency?
That's exactly it. So lastly, delay as a I'll say a detractor. So speak to that if you would.
Well, and I think what we're talking here is like that. What I'm looking for is so far down the line. It's Rome's not built in a day kind of a thing. I want to be driving that helicopter yesterday. But it's not going to happen that way. You're going to go through phases. You're going to go through basic skills, and then you're going to learn instruments. You're going to step by step by step. Then we're going to send you your unit where you're a nobody, and you're basically going to go through mini flight school again. And that's all step. And ultimately, you come out and you go, boom, there's your reward. Now you're ready to go aviator. And that's a 2-year maybe timeline. And so the delay of that reward could throw people off the motivation.
No, that's well said, brother. That's exactly it. And again, reflecting on what you've done, what I've done, there's, I'll say, programmed in to that schooling. People have done that for you by and large.
Right.
So, West Point 4-year degree, they're like, we're going to lay out for you, what my degree was in systems engineering. So here's prescribed for you all the courses you need to take to be a systems engineer, and then the rest of the things that the academy had in store, plebe boxing and wrestling and all sorts of other things, and then the military training clearly. But by and large, it's like, we're going to present you with a bunch of gates and milestones for you to pass through, and you either pass or you don't. But as long as you are able to pass, through these gates, you're going to make it.
Well, and I think the Army is genius at that, actually. If you take a look at this little stepping stone, these gates you speak of, it really is. I think it does hold off that delay problem, because you are constantly busy doing this job, doing whatever that job is, or doing whatever it is. But the program is what's great. So now if you go back and you're outside of an organization and you're trying to find this on your own, I see this delay being more of an issue too, because maybe you're not running a program that's got these built-in gates for you. So
I think you're absolutely right. No, exactly. When they're built in and you realize, or hey, I just need to do and perform the tasks that have been put forth in front of me. And the rest is, I'm not going to say preordained, but hey, I do all these things, and ominous dominus, I get a degree, or I'm an aviator, or a ranger, or whatever. I just need to pass. It's still tough, and you're like, oh my God, it's so far off. But let me just put my nose down, grind, and get it done. And I know at the end of this pipeline, I will have achieved my goals.
It's that joke where they say, hey, a lot of people have been in college for 8 years. They just usually call them a doctor.
Yeah, yes. Right.
You don't have any degree.
Yeah, exactly. But to your point, that delay is really insidious when you're setting your own goals and the path is not really prescribed.
Right.
And you're like, hey, it's going to take me a while, and there's going to be a lot of work, big body work that goes into this. And you're like, man, it's so far off, and there's so much work to be done. And I'm really not quite sure of what it is that I need to do. So case in point, like Warriors Ascent is an example. I would say a lot of the benefit that people derive from our approach is not so much that, hey, our approach is the best or the only approach out there. It's that we provide I'll say a success path per se, and distill and curate a myriad of different protocols, modalities, healing modalities, into something that we can say, if you do these things, I'm not going to say and oversell and say you will be healed, but your life will be better. You will definitely, in terms of incrementalism, like you will be better, in X amount of time if you do these things every day, right? So that, in terms of delay, like, well, geez, I don't even know where to begin. What steps do I need to take? I lack motivation because I can't see the path forward. Right. And it seems to be so insurmountable, that I don't even have an assurance that if I do these things, that I will reach my goal.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, I'll say take that abstract concept and make it somewhat concrete. That, I think, is important. So again, getting back to the motivation. So expectancy, having a reasonable expectation of success, that success path, that notion that if I do these things, I will be successful. Number 2, value. But I would say value is preeminent. It's so important. If you don't value something enough to put forth, again, that requisite effort, It's almost pointless. So choose your goals wisely.
After a cohort, we do a group text and we try to maintain, some tribe and some community there. And, I've been a year plus and we got a little quiet, but recently we've had one of our guys and he's struggling a little bit and he's reaching out. What do? I don't know what to do. I just can't stop. And it's every single, I didn't say a word, but I watched as each person in the cohort gave their, hey, are you doing the program? Have you, did you, and they go through, each person goes through that, hey, isn't the value of being sober better, like in your family? And it's like chirp, chirp, chirp from that side. And then I started getting them individually just to me. And I started saying, listen, I'm going to echo everything that our classmates said.
That's right. Are you doing the things?
Are you doing the things?
Right.
Have you gotten on a Wednesday Warriors thing? Because we have a great one coming up on missions. How to, and I know we did this already, but I know you haven't been to one. So you have to work it. It's not just going to happen.
That's right. Yep.
And it's
because it only works if you do. The process only works if you do.
Yeah. And so you can't, the wish can't just be there. It comes with everything.
That's right.
And I know that then this poor guy, and I feel for him, and he feels overwhelmed that he's never going to be able to get to that first step again. But it's just, again, it goes back to the baby steps. And I don't want to pick on anybody, which is why I won't say any names or anything, of course. But it's if you don't stay consistent, and the thing I love about our program, of course, is I said we left with a journal that was a 21-day, step-by-step journal, and open the thing, start using it really. And then once you fight for yourself, you'll see us all fighting for you as well. That's kind of how I left it.
No, absolutely. And in terms of impulsivity, I'd say there's probably a degree there. It's, you know what to do. Are you doing all the things, much like you with flight school? Are you doing the things required to be a good aviator? Well, hey, I've got this side gig now.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you focus on the things that really are going to get you to where you need to be? It's the same thing. It's like, well, no, I'm not meditating. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not sleeping. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing all the things that are part of our protocol. Okay. You're not doing it. It's like, then what are you looking to do? Well, hey, maybe this will work. No, this stuff will work if you do it. And
but it won't work if you don't do it. That's a promise.
Right, exactly. And that's,
and I can't even promise
impulsivity piece.
I can't promise that it's going to work for you the way it worked for me. But I know it won't do anything if you don't do anything. That is 100% guarantee. And so you have nothing to lose by trying.
Yeah. So, hope, right? We'll credit Shane Lopez with that. And his book, Making Hope Happen, right? So what he says is that hope is a function of goals plus agency plus pathways. So we'll just discuss that briefly. So goals, I think, are pretty self-evident, right? We've kind of explicated that, numerous times. Hey, purpose, mission, goals, you got to have goals, right? That direct you, right? So, hey, without a goal, you're just a ship adrift. You're wandering aimlessly. You've got no North Star. So setting smart goals, reasonable goals, very, very important. Agency is the next thing that we'll speak to, which is important. So agency is just nothing more than, I'll say, a fancy way of saying that, you have a degree of control or influence on the outcome. In other words, you're not just unempowered, right? To where I have no bearing on the outcome. It's either going to happen or it's not. Without my input at all. That's not the case. Agency is all about I may not have total control, but I definitely have influence there. I do have some degree of say or control, impact, influence on the outcome through my actions. So having that level of agency, is important. Last thing is pathways, and you've talked about this before in terms of PACE, right? Contingency. So in the Special Forces, we talked about PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, whether that was COMO, whether that was LCs, PZs, routes, whatever it might be, routes, what have you. But that redundancy, which is very, very important. It's the same thing, same concept. So they're saying pathways, I'd say in military parlance, contingencies. This notion that, well, if we can't achieve it this way, let's achieve it this
Another way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not, an instance where, hey, there's one way to do this, and if there's an obstacle in that way, we have no hope, right? It's the ability to say, no, if there are obstacles in our way or impediments, right, to us achieving our objectives, we can either circumvent them, we can overcome them, or we can go a different route that will get us the same way or achieve the same objective, I should say.
I used to always say all the time when we were planning, somebody go, well, I hope that, and I would say, hope is not a plan. And it's like, I don't want to hear hope in this at all. I want a plan with 3, contingent routes in and out. I want pace on the ground. I want this. I don't want hope.
That's right. I want to say Gordon R. Sullivan, and I believe he was the superintendent when I was at West Point, wrote a book called Hope is Not a Course of Action. Yeah. I believe that's the title. But no, absolutely. It's like, hey, hope is great.
I'm sure I was stolen because I heard it from somebody else. And I thought that is, when you're military planning, that is accurate. I like this equation, though, because it kind of makes that not so true,
Absolutely.
Have some goals, agencies, and pathways. Yeah. I realized, the other thing I realized about hope is it's something you have to have, in the world for yourself to change, to get that self-actualization. I mean, if you lose any hope, you're not getting there, I don't think. So, I mean, that's obviously what we're talking about here.
No, obviously. And yeah, when hope begins to wane, or as I think MacArthur said in his address to the Corps Cadets, when hope becomes forlorn, you've got a problem. I mean, you can have a great plan, but if you're like, so that's important. So anyway, to sum things up, to make it actionable, the takeaways are, in terms of motivation, right? You've got to value things very highly for tough goals. That's very important. So if you're embarking on, something that is going to be crushing, you'd better value it highly and really have that dialed in, right? So expectancy, right? You need to feel that you can do it, but you have to know that there are going to be challenges, right? And obstacles in the way. So again, I'll cite the Stockdale paradox, grit, tenacity, call it whatever, impulsivity, right? So make sure you've got commitment, focus, intention, right? And attention. Don't be distracted, because otherwise, you will lose motivation. And then delay, right? Set intermediate and long-term, intermediate goals for your long-term objectives. And that way, it's not so far off. You can meet an objective, week to week, month to month, year to year. That provides, I'll say, a sense of urgency, which will kind of keep you on task. Because otherwise, it seems so far off that you're like, yeah, I'll get to it someday.
And it feels good to have little victories. So if I put this goal here and I make it, wow, that feels good. That's so right. The next goal, I'm pretty sure I can make that, and then I hit that goal and it feels good.
There's a psychology to that. They call it the power of incremental wins.
Yeah,
there is a psychological concept to that. This notion that I'm proving to myself that I can achieve my goals.
Yeah,
and that I can stay true. Right. Exactly. It becomes self-perpetuating.
Yeah.
Exactly. So beyond just meeting the incremental steps in achievement, you're reinforcing this notion that you can succeed and that you can honor those commitments to yourself.
I think personal fitness trainers subscribe to this kind of theory. I mean, it makes sense in so many walks of life to think like that.
Yeah. So lastly, in terms of hope, right? So goals, they need to be worthy and exciting, of course, as we've talked about, right? So agency, you've got the power to bring your goals to fruition. So that's important, is this understanding that you do have the ability, right? And if you don't, if you're like, this is beyond my control, I mean, hope is going to be hard to come by, right? Yeah. And then lastly, pathways, pace, multiple ways about going and achieving your objectives. So that redundancy, so that if you do invariably meet obstacles, it's not the case that all is lost and now, the ship is sunk. We can say, no, hey, we've got a contingency. We've got a plan for that. There are other means.
Yep.
So that's key. All right. So motivation and hope as it ties to, I'll say, soul and spirit, so I think very important.
Excellent.
All right. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah. Episode 9 in the book. Thank you. Hi, Matt Hastings here, sending a thank you for watching this episode of the Warriors Ascent podcast. We strive to build a community of warriors made up of our nation's veterans and first responders. And to reach as many of those in need as possible, we need your help. Please just smash that like button and comment or share our content. Warriors Ascent is a Kansas City-based nonprofit that aids veterans and first responders with PTS. I went through this effective program and want those that are struggling to find what I found. Check us out on our website at warriorsascent.org.